Welcome to the Kentucky Atheist.
Ain't no motherfucker in this world could do it like me. Open up your eyes and insert a little rising. You don't have to love me, you don't have to like me. Got enough love in myself, in my psyche. You should have the same in your brain nightly. If you wanna taste it, you can fucking try me. If you wanna hate, you know where to find me. And if you're going atheist, you can fucking fight me. I'll be cruising in my lane fast, call it high speed. I've been working hard, yeah, I've been working nightly. If you think you'll win, ha, nah, likely. I be taking shots, yeah, cold-blooded, icy. Watching numbers grow is what I call sightseeing. In the front row, run it up when they hype me. The following grows, they know how to ignite me. Call me CEO, I've been running shit right, see. And I ain't playing games, I create my own lane.
All right. Hey, everybody. Today, we have quite the show. You're going to want to stick around for this one. The couple days ago, I talked about some interactions I had with Darth Dawkins and Sam from over at Standing for Truth. And it was a whole presup argument thing. And I said, well, let's talk about how you can deal with presup arguments and you know, how they're made and stuff, and go through that in a series of videos. Well, I figured we might as well go ahead and start off with what is my very favorite way to address this. And I tried to do it during that video, but as soon as I said, oh yeah, I'll give you the Bible's true, let's go that road, they didn't want to talk about that anymore. So today we're going to talk about the problem of deception, and we're going to expand on it a little bit and things around it. But one of the now Tux is here with me today. How are you doing, Tux?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
So when we first met, you kind of threw out a little line about the problem of deception, and I didn't really know what you were talking about at the time. I wasn't familiar with it. And then later, you was like, oh, hey, Brandon over at Mindshift made this excellent video about it. And I went and watched it, and it blew my mind. My mind was blown immediately. I was like, wow, this is major shit here. This is a big deal. And the problem of deception simply is just, well, I don't know if there's really a simple way to put it, is there? I mean, there's a couple different things you can gather from it, I guess. Like there's a problem that man was even created to be deceived, which is an issue in itself. But then there's also how are we to know what we're being deceived about, and by who and when, and the Bible is supposed to be the directions for this, right? So we're going to use the Bible itself to talk about it, right? And there's some things you can expand to get outside of, you know, interpretation and things of Scripture, but it's mostly just the Bible. And this is a really good argument. It's a really good one to deal with presuppers. So let's see. We've got a few people showed up. Trees is here. PC's here. PC's always here. PC's great. PC's probably here and on the 6 other channels that are all broadcasting right now too. Whenever I started streaming at 2 p.m. on Sundays, there was nobody streaming at that time. That's why I did it. And now there's like 6 other streams going on at the same time, which is fine. I'm not complaining. Everybody can stream when they want. I mean, it's not like when we finish this show, it can never be seen again. People can definitely watch it later. And I hope that they do, because this I think will be one of my more interesting videos. A lot of times I sit and talk about the things that I think and feel, and we BS around and talk to people, you know, but this will be, I guess, what I call a more technical video, where not only am I going to go through this and try and help some others to understand it, but it'll be kind of a learning thing for me too at the same time. And B.S. Lewis is actually very well versed in this as well. And so another excellent person to talk to about this. But I hope everybody likes my hat. Jesus was a refugee. It's on the side it says he gets us.
That's
It's
funny.
yeah, that's today's hat. What's up, Dave? Good to see you. But so Jimmy, you've been looking into this problem for quite a while, right? And it's like the basis for the bow tie 8 stuff. And why don't I let you start before I get into talking Bible verses?
So the history of this problem for me occurred when I had a vision or a theophany of some sort, and I was attempting to, at the time, I was starting to feel some of the encroachment of doubt overcoming my desire to be Christian. Even though I'd never truly been a Christian, I did want to become a Christian, and I always put it off and thought someday I will. And for lack of a better colloquial term, I just lived in sin. Like, I just lived life. And I enjoyed being one with nature for long periods of time, which most people don't get to do. And you learn a lot in studying nature, being a part of nature, being absorbed by nature, in a weird sense, baptized in nature. And I was in civilization. I was a stay-at-home dad at the time, and I wasn't getting very social, but I had time to focus on becoming a Christian. And had a vision one night, and the answer was basically, just make sure it's not deception. That's all you have to do. Just make sure it's not deception. I felt like I was talking to God. It felt like I was in the presence of God. I don't know for certain it was anything more than the neural firings in my head. If it was supernatural, it is not a physical being or a physical attestation of something. Something was in my head, if it was in, or it was just my head. Now,
Sure.
Let's go on an exploratory. Let's make sure the whole thing's not deception. And that's all you have to do. The first, kind of the data points that I have off the top of my head. If you use that you're supposed to become a Christian based on faith, and you use the entirety of the Bible, there's something like 450 times that the term faith is used in the positive. You need to use faith in the positive. The number of times that deception, deceiver, or deceived is used in a negative connotation is about 270. So my question to you is, really, should anyone use faith? Isn't the purpose of everything that you read in the Bible is to make sure that you're not deceived? And once you start looking through that lens, you find deception everywhere. You find that the negative deception within the positive of faith, if faith is the positive. Now in the present day, fast forward roughly, the vision occurred in early 2016, and we're 8 years later, roughly. My question to you is, if there's no such thing as supernatural beings, and the bow tie 8 can't be substantiated of any of the entities that are on that list, then humans are then the default. If my claim is that this holy book is deception, have I met my burden of proof in the claim that this is human deception if we can prove that humans write with stories, humans write with stories that deceive, humans write with stories that take advantage of people's good nature, take advantage of people's greed, take advantage of people's fear? And I believe all of those are true. I believe humans have exhibited that capability.
Sure.
Then the Bible came from humans who did those things, who told those stories. And if you look close, and once you look for the deception and the layers for the deception, then it's right there. You'll find the layers of deception. So for instance, you were talked about Brandon from Mindshift. He had a video today where he prominently displayed that there is layers of writings and secret teachings within the word. How did it get there? The same book that's used to bring you to Christianity is also to the same source that somebody like myself could take advantage of the greedy, of the good-natured, of the fearful. And the easiest thing, I think James Apperson one time said it best. He's like, the smartest atheist in the world right now is Joel Osteen, because he knows how to improve people's livelihood through using this book, play on people's fears and play on their greed for a richer life. And and once you see the patterns, you start to see how they came up with it. So one of the reasons that I pick apart Genesis 1 through 11 is because when I was a kid, that was the first red flag that I had. And the reason I didn't go and get baptized is because all of a sudden I was like, something's wrong here. I didn't know the word incompetent, but I was like, hey, this God is incompetent. And I was told is the one that loves all of us and did all these things. And I now, full disclosure, I have dyslexia, so sometimes I just don't read things the way they were linear. The literary function and the linear. Sorry, I'm not able to say it. Linear, the linear display of how words go this way. I sometimes don't see that.
Right.
Almost as in a ball. I see things, everything comes around from beginning to end. And anybody who sees that then starts to see what is called, and I didn't know this term until fairly recently, but the serpent scheme. The Ouroboros deception. Basically the belief of the snake. The system, in my opinion, the system of the Bible is designed for the snake to eat its own tail. All of humanity is the snake. You got to nibble off the end, and you got to make it so big that the snake doesn't consume all of itself, so it's a danger. But you need the head to feed the tail. And the serpent scheme, once you understand how this old Gnostic type of thinking, these layers of knowledge, as Brandon from Mindshift had basically displayed, that Jesus was within the text. He was teaching it to the 12. And so you have that circle or that round curve that meets someplace. That meets in a space, a small space where the two meet, the consumption and the deception. And to me, that's how it started. So I somehow came upon it naturally, not understanding it, and it's grown. And even up until about 4-ish years ago, roughly the summer of 2020, I still kind of believe that there was a such thing as potentially a Jesus who was a God, and that there was a devil who was the opponent. And right before then, I had switched. I was like, okay, the good guy might be the serpent. You know, when you kind of look at this deception, spooling deception, the devil character might be the one who's hired the Jesus character. And once you start seeing things in that light, then you're either cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, which is very possible. I might be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, or it's the answer also to coming to the conclusion there's no such thing as a human God named Jesus. There's just a human named Jesus who was probably amongst a cult of apocalyptic preachers who had their trope. And there was no devil that tempted him in the wilderness as to start his ministry. And it's basically it. So that's the origin story for my deception conclusions now.
Right. And also we'll get into, I've got at least one, there may be a couple of examples of the show You're Not Cuckoo, because we've got examples of deception from God going on. And it's very much labeled as that in the Bible. But it's funny how your story started, because that's kind of similar to some things that happened to me. I thought I had this experience, and as I looked into it, I realized that, you know, it was in my head, and that was probably it, you know. But and the thing about it is that you also said that's very important is what we're going to talk about doesn't require that you be an atheist. I mean, you can very well believe in all these things, and it's, I mean, I feel like it's something you need to reconcile. I mean, you need to look at this deception and how it is an issue, and tell me, you know, by your reading of the scripture, what mechanism you use to get around this, because I don't know how you could say for certain that you're not being deceived, because it lays out the roadmap that it very well could be the case, and you're powerless to know. And that's an issue. But so let's lay a little groundwork here. Again, Brandon goes over a lot more verses than what I'm going to, but I've still got several here, and we've got a few to kind of lay the groundwork for this, and then we'll talk some more about events in the New Testament and stuff that make you think that it could be a deception.
Yeah.
So, as you said, we start in Genesis with the fall.
Yeah.
And it reads, the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. So he was made by God. He said to woman, did God really say you must not eat from the tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die. And you will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. The serpent suggests that God deceives them. So she eats the fruit, she shares it with Adam, and whenever God finds out, she says right here, the woman said, the serpent deceived me and I ate. So what this does is, either way, God has made deception built into the garden, which was supposed to be perfection. Now, what is the reason for that? You would have to ask yourself, why is that something that God included? I mean, man didn't know of good and evil, but deception was absolutely possible from the very beginning. So why? When we go, let me get my notes here too. When we go, and there's arguments made that it's the serpent, it's not Satan, and some Christians say that, some don't. But if we look at Revelation 12:9, it says, the great dragon was hurled down. That ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray, he was hurled to earth and his angels with him. This is the NIV. In the King James Version, it actually points to the garden. So, and what is Satan? 1 Peter 5:8, be alert and sober of mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So Satan was the serpent. Satan is out to deceive you, is after you. That's all. That's all laid out here. So 2 Corinthians, for such people are false prophets, deceitful workers, masquerading as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. And this is very important. This tells you that not only was Satan the original deceiver, or at least they say, I think God was the original deceiver, but either way, it's all laid out. But this tells you that Satan can deceive you by masquerading as an angel of light. And what the implication of that is that you would have no way to know if Satan can if Satan can masquerade as an angel of light and do and be all the things that an angel of light is, then how are you as a mere mortal to be able to discern that? There needs to be some way for you to do that, and we get into that a little bit later. But it's just important to know that Satan has these powers, and they were given to Satan by God.
Well,
So
here's my question to you.
sure.
How does Paul know that? How does he know Satan masquerades as an angel of light? How did he learn that? Did he have a vision?
That's a good question.
Satan himself? Did he have a vision from Jesus that was light that other people may or may not have seen, heard, or felt? Because in the account of Acts and his vision of light, it tells it 3 different ways. Sometimes they didn't see anything, sometimes they heard but didn't see, and sometimes they reacted and seeing. It's hard to tell. It's confusing.
Yeah.
Also in the 2 Corinthians 11, this is calling out Paul, and he's on the defense for having been obstructing and caught deceiving churches.
Right.
He is in my opinion, supernatural beings. He understands the things I understand in terms of how to preach to these folks, garner the following, and make them to his use under his deception. So my reference to this verse in 2 Corinthians 11 is Paul's back's against the wall. He's been working hard. He's confessing that, yes, he's been caught in whatever this deception is. And then you turn the page and he is proud of having done what he did. And he loves you and he caught you with guile. It is, no matter how you sort this out, I think Paul has gotten caught, but the folks around him are figuring out, because he's accused of deceiving other churches, and his excuse is some variation of, "Hey, don't worry, I didn't deceive you, at least." And then the next page he says, "Well, I do love you, but it's because I deceived you and I caught you with guile."
Yeah. And this next one tells you that, people can be deceived by other people. That's exactly where it goes. This is out of Matthew, though, and it says, "False messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs, wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect." So this is saying that not only Satan and the devil, but other people, other Christians can deceive you, and that they can even perform great signs and wonders to deceive you, which is, again, a major thing, because that's how we're later to know that it is Jesus, is by his signs and wonders. And
do you see, like, I think Kanye West, or Ye, was attempting to be the next Messiah about 3 or 4 years ago. If you pay attention to the words of his song and you pay attention to the actions that he was kind of taking against his faithful followers, I think he is in the mindset of understanding it too. And you've seen a little more recently, earlier this year, Terrence, I'm drawing a blank on his last name. Is it Howard?
Howard.
Yeah. Terrence Howard, I think, effectively trying to do the same type of mathematics that Paul does.
Yeah.
And in his proclamations.
Good metaphor. I like that. Yeah. I mean, it's a just the existence of deception starting at the creation is a huge red flag, right? I mean, that's it's a big deal because deception is the basis for the rest of the Bible. Satan is the father of lies and deception, and that's all, you know, that's all laid out to, and that's the whole thing is, don't be deceived from the truth by the devil. Listen to me and know the truth. But you have to ask yourself, how do you know if you're being deceived? And the Bible clearly tells you that you can't know, because even the elect can be deceived. God's chosen people that are to go to heaven can be deceived. And that means that anybody can be deceived. And this is also a great way to talk about free will too, because it completely screws up free will if you're given the presup their position. What is going on? Okay.
So one of the things that you're touching on, I think you're touching on.
Sure.
I want to go back and I want everyone to read what we just read, not from the perspective that God just created the world in Genesis 1. He finished creating again in a reiteration in Genesis 2 of day 6. I want you to read Genesis 3 after you've read Genesis 4. And I want you to see Genesis 4 is actually a origin story of humans interacting with other humans. And then I want you to work backwards and show that they built a foundation under with Genesis 1 through 3 to support what a human was doing in Genesis 4. And to me, this is the scenario that plays out. God doesn't need your meats and grains. A person who pretends that they have a curse and protection and tells you that they need to bring you their meats and grains, in my opinion, this is the scam that comes first. Because I'm pretty damn sure that if you're talking with God directly and you just got these sacrifices, quote unquote sacrifices, and they're brought before God, and he likes one more than the other, and he comforts you by telling you, well, hey, try again, and then you'll rule over your brother. My question to you is, the moment he says, rule over your brother, tell me there's a God that needs you to rule over your brother.
Yeah.
Or is there a scam artist who is making up bad MF, and they'll kill anybody and are not afraid to do it, and it's a somewhere around 3,500 years ago, 2,800 to 3,500 years ago, Cosa Nostra early version. It's unnecessary. God does not need anybody's murder. He does not need anybody's meats. He doesn't need anybody's grains. He doesn't need to show preferential to those types of into any kind of food object or anything like that.
Right.
Another problem with the Genesis 4 story is, in the story, Cain is afraid of something over where he's about to go dwell.
Yeah.
Now, why would he be afraid of anything over there? There shouldn't be anything. As far as I can tell, there should be only 3 people on Earth at this time. But somehow, magically, there's something over there he's worried about. He magically gets a wife that isn't accounted for. He bears a son with that wife and starts a city. Now, to me, the more likely, if you start at Genesis 4, there is somebody who goes into town, finds a wife, has a son, and he starts deceiving the city. And he has a story in which, hey, I've got this blessing. I've got this mark on my forehead here. This mark gives me everything that I need. I'm bulletproof, guys. I've got a big, bad, invisible idol that is protecting me. And there's nothing you can do about it. So bring me your meats, bring me your grains, and we'll all flourish together. I'm going to start this magical welfare system, and everybody's going to be happy because my big invisible idol is happy. And anytime anything goes bad, well, then obviously my invisible idol is mad. So I look at Genesis 4 came before Genesis 1 through 3. So when you read Genesis 3 with those eyes, there is a foundational story to support the invisible bad MF who is going to take your meats and grains and you're going to like it. And if you go over there and you don't eat of that fruit, or you eat of that fruit, you're in trouble too. Got you coming and I got you going. So I got your fear, I got your good intentions, and I've got your untold treasures. Yep. All three are manipulated right there. Genesis 1, 2, 3, and 4.
That the things that you need to manipulate and deceive someone, right?
The things that you need.
It's all laid out. Yeah.
It's all laid out. 8th century BC. Probably this was written 8th or 9th century BC. And it was a tale as old as time, and some people fell for it and some people didn't. And
yeah, I think that, and for the people watching and stuff, I think that if you're not aware of a lot of this, once we go through this, go back and look at your Bible and think about this and keep this stuff in mind and read through it and look at it from that perspective. And it's a totally different book at that point. Yeah. There's a lot of strange things that all point to this, and I'm so surprised that this problem doesn't get more attention and things than it does, because you deal with, I would say, at least half of the Christians, it's more than half though, that I deal with are presuppers, and if they want to do that, like, they need to be able to answer for this. And if they can't, then why should we listen to anything they have to say when they can't reconcile their own book? And this is only using the Bible. This is nothing else.
And and I don't want to sound like I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm usually the dumbest guy. I have a lot of learned, but I am not smart. I just see the scam that nobody else does. It's it's not that I am smarter than anybody. This is the three things that I mentioned. If you got taken advantage of, see what you can do not to be taken advantage of anymore. That's it. That's all my advice. If you want to play ignorance as bliss, because here's the thing, you get in exchange for this, you get what I believe is a catfishing love.
Sure.
And that feels good. It makes that aspect alone makes atheism feel like it's dull and unforbidding, and there's nothing there to fill that God-shaped hole.
Right.
I wish I had my I just realized I've got my sunglasses on.
Yeah. That's okay.
But get my regular glasses
so because I hate this damn light.
You can see my pretty eyes.
You can see the color of my eyes when I'm closer, but
yeah.
I hate this light. But it's necessary. I love all that. I think that all that's really, I think that not only because I'm just laying out like the verses and stuff and how we get there, but you like, again, the expansion on it part of the implications and what the light that it makes you see it, the rest of this in is just as important. But I mean, you don't have to take our word for it. I mean, the words are in the book just the same for you. You can go read what they say. And when if you're going to, I just say maybe consider this as you read. And it's, it'll give you a totally different view of the Bible and what it says and what it means. And it's, this is one of the coolest arguments or I don't even know if it's one of the coolest like implications of what the Bible itself says.
Yeah.
Because again, you don't need anything else. Like all that stuff that the Tux is talking about there and things, that's his interpretation of it and how he, sees it. But it's the same words, and it's not like what he's driving at there isn't a rational place to go with this, because it's very much the way it reads and stuff. And we're not even all the way through it yet. We're very early. All we've laid out all I've laid out so far anyway, is that God made his creation to be deceived. His creation was deceived, whether it be by him or the devil, it doesn't matter. But that devil, who is the father of lies and able to deceive, can trick you by masquerading as an angel of light, and is able to deceive anyone, including the elect. And we are also able to deceive each other, which is, if we can deceive each other to the point that you can't tell, what do you think a supernatural being like the devil can do? How are you to measure that? I mean, we're powerless against this. There's no way to. The Bible does later say something, and we'll get there. But so let's look at. Let me see here. Let me make sure I'm following my.
A good bit of reading, by the way, to follow up with the Genesis 3 narrative and the other verses that Genesis 12:9, is there's a Gnostic writing from the Nag Hammadi library called The Testimony of Truth. And I can leave a link in the description. Am I a Hi Robin. I'm not a moderator, I don't think.
If you post it in the private chat, I'll throw it in there real quick.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? I can't do that. Hold on. PC, if you're still there, will you make Jimmy a mod? I think you can do that as a managing moderator. I don't have anything open to get to it, is why I oh hell. Go ahead and post it in the chat.
Okay. Post this in the chat.
I got you.
And I'm gonna use my alternative computer. Got 2 turntables and a microphone. I just heard myself on the playback. That's funny.
Yep, you can do it now.
I had to refresh it. Okay.
All right. Well, while you do that, I want to say something, because at this point in this argument, where I would go with it is I would confirm with whoever you're talking to that, okay, we've laid out that these things are true. The Bible says it. I mean, they have to. Your Bible fundamentalist people are going to have to accept these things, because you're using anything only verses, and this next one here is important. So the coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie, and all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. how are we to determine the truth? First of all, if we're able to be deceived, and when we talk about how we are to okay, I had to make sure that was the right one. When we're talking about signs and wonders, that's how we're supposed to determine that Jesus is the Son of God. That those are the exact same ways we're supposed to determine it. So if Satan can deceive us, masquerades as a child of light, and can do these same signs, wonders, miracles, etc., then we have no way to know the difference between the signs and wonders from Jesus and the signs and wonders from Satan. And here in John 2:11, we're told what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So Jesus did signs and wonders, and they believed in him. But we have a being out there that can do these same signs and wonders and deceive you. And this is something I'm going to point out that not many people add into this, but the hold on, I forgot. The signs and wonders that Jesus does. Remember, the Jews didn't accept Jesus as a Messiah. They said he was a false prophet, and that going by their book, which again, deception can be laid out through the whole thing, of course, but and how are you to know is the major question. But Jesus was not accepted by the Jews as the prophet, so or as the Messiah. And then he's doing these signs and wonders and miracles here, which gives the Jews an avenue to say that, to follow this too, and say that Jesus was a deception. Now, I say that the whole thing was a deception because it lays it out from the beginning, but this is just a problem for those that don't want to engage with the Old Testament also. Why are you supposed to believe? Because Jesus performed signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and believing you may have life in his name. So you're supposed to believe these signs and wonders, but you're given no way to do so. And there were other signs and wonders that aren't here, that aren't mentioned here. And even if you say that, well, these signs and wonders are Jesus, what about those others? Because still you have no mechanism to determine which is which. We're left helpless and hopeless in this. If any of this is true, of course, most of us don't think it is. Let me reiterate, this is, for me anyway, the way I put this is how to deal with presuppositionalists, because it leaves them in a place to where they can't say whether their book is true or written by the devil or anything. They have no way to say any of that, even if you give them that all that stuff is true. John 4:1, don't believe in every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they're from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. How would we test them? By looking at the signs and wonders, which again, we know that Satan is completely capable of. And you already have the charge that Jesus is not who he says he is. So you have that built into the book. I'm not saying that you have to believe that's the case. It's not what I'm trying to do here. Understand that it's to say that you don't have any way to say that this book is one way or the other because of this, because it is so contradictory in a whole number of things. The Bible has all kinds of problems, but this one, when you assert this one first and then look at those other problems, it all ties, it brings it all together then. And it's like, wait a minute, that if Satan was trying to deceive you, he would do these things. He would be okay with slavery. He would be okay with all the suffering and killing everybody in the world and the floods and the making people wander in the desert for 40 years, and when they ask for food, giving them snakes. Like when you start putting all those things together, it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a lot there. What does go within mean? I don't know. Oh, I see. She's answering somebody else. Sorry, I'm having to flip back and forth from the chat to my slides here. But all of that's laid out now, and we'll talk more about it in 1 second. But something Jimmy talked about earlier, there's Jeremiah's complaint in Jeremiah 27. He says to God, "You deceived me, Lord. I was deceived. You overpowered me and prevailed. I am ridiculed all day long. Everyone mocks me." What is this? If you take all those other things, what does this mean? What are the implications of this? It means that the God that Jeremiah thinks is all good in things is actually the deceiver. And there's other examples of this. This is the only one I threw in.
I'll be honest. I don't think I've ever noticed that verse.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't think I've ever come across. I've never done any kind of investigation into the origin of that verse. That's funny. I learned something new today.
There's other one. There's a couple others too where they talk about God deceiving people, and that they were deceived anyway when they're talking to God. So that's the only one I put in because I literally wrote this about 30 minutes before we came live here, and everything I wanted to say.
That's funny. Wow.
So
that's funny. I can't say that I've come across that. I mean, something like that is a little obscure. I don't know what the context is in Jeremiah of that, but I can only imagine that, every good story has a Star Wars start where the bad guy's pursuing you. You're down on your luck, and then you flank them, and you get the upper hand, and then you win the day, and you're the hero, right?
Right.
And then you have the down in the dumps again, and you have the Empire comes back, and then you prevail over it. The David versus Goliath story, and just told in different sequence and different little rabbit holes of imaginary adventure.
Oh, right. No, it's always a big like that. They try to make every part of it its own big tragic adventure. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I had never seen that one before.
So there's a couple, and one of the things I like about this is that there's it doesn't matter which way you go with that. You can say, well, maybe it's not actually God that's deceiving Jeremiah, or you can say it is God that's deceiving Jeremiah, and God is the deceiver because God was the original deceiver. It doesn't matter which way you go with it, because you have no way, you have no mechanism to show any reason for one or the other more or less. There's no way around this is the problem, because it's laid out in the Bible itself. There's no way for you to tell when you're being deceived and when you're not, and what things in the Bible are a deception and what things are not. And to tie all that back into what Jimmy said at the beginning, telling his story and stuff, is since you have no way to know, you have no way to say whether you're being deceived or whether God is the deceiver in the book, whether all of these things. Why would God give another being the same supernatural powers to masquerade and to confuse and deceive his creation that he wanted to be perfect from the beginning? You have to start assessing all of these things and breaking it down. And when you start to do that, God is the evil character, or he's not, and you have no way to know. But Jimmy pointed out, though, that man wrote the Bible, and the Bible doesn't contest that. Man wrote the Bible, and man certainly does deceive each other for any number of reasons. So even if you don't want to accept God the deceiver, as I said, which is the way it reads to me, you still have every reason for man to deceive you through the Bible with these stories. And it's like it's all buried in there, because they have to have that, here's the promise of good things, here's the threat of bad things, and I'll get you there whether I have to deceive you or not. And that is, I think when you read the Bible, there's other verses and stuff that you can apply this to that means a lot. And like if you go back and again look at suffering and divine hiddenness, why would a God create this world when he could have created it any other way? Well, he created this world full of evil and suffering because that God is the deceiver. So, yeah. And how do you know?
It is an impossibility. It is impossibility, in my opinion. Even if you take the literal narrative that there's a God, he created us, he created everything, he made everything perfect. No matter how you slice it, if there is a deceiver that we have to be tempted by or any kind of tested, that being has a boss. You're either tricked by the devil or you're worshiping his boss.
Yep. and you have no way to say otherwise. Like there's no mechanism, because
there's nothing you can do about
it.
But here's the thing. The reason I asked for in the Bowtie 8 evidence that the devil exists or demons exist or bad angels exist is quite simply, they don't care about my free will. They don't care about your free will. If they exist and they've got a manifesto that they're working on and you're a part of, not being a Jesus follower is then a part of that manifesto, well, guess what? There should be selfies everywhere. Devils, demons, bad angels. Yeah. They don't care. They're not concerned about your free will.
The ability of even the devil to deceive you, though, I feel like destroys free will completely. That there's, and again, it's all laid out in the Bible that free will isn't actually a real thing. But
yeah, I don't think it's in the Bible. I've seen, I think, a vague verse in Deuteronomy and a vague verse in I can't remember, one of the Thessalonians, maybe. I've forgotten. Like it was such a weak sauce argument that it's not even going to occupy any space in my head.
Right.
I can clearly see that the intention of this book is that I'm supposed to know God according to about 30 or 40 scriptures that God has directly interacted with people.
Yeah.
And,
and we know that some of those people, because within their own stories, they deceive others. So we know they're capable of doing it. I mean, what you talked about with Paul is considered one of the most important sources in the Bible, and we know that he talks. It's talked about in the Bible, Paul's deception. So
yeah,
it's inescapable. And for the presupper that wants to say, well, any worldview that isn't a biblical worldview is false, that's a problem for them. And the implications of this then from the atheist perspective, because when I make this argument, I'm allowing that your God exists and the supernatural and the devil, of course. I have to allow for all those things and then say all those things are true, and here's the only source for those things right here. And in this very source is where all that's pulled from. So from the atheist point of view, though, I look at that, and to me, it says, this is man's nature. In man's primitive man's goal to create this perfect being, God, and to control the masses through it by promising the carrot and the stick, of course, by promising this good thing with the threat of this bad thing. They still failed because they couldn't get around not making that perfect being deceptive to get you there. There was the writers of the Bible couldn't help but create an evil God because man themselves is deceptive and they deceive each other, and this was all a deception to begin with. And if it's all a deception to begin with, you're going to find the little, in a book this many books put together, you're going to find the little tidbits of that deception throughout it. It's there. I mean,
yeah. The majority of that book isn't about the deception. The majority of that book is about the people who have fallen in love with the deception.
Yeah, this has been one of my favorite streams. Just so you know, Jimmy, I'm enjoying the shit out of this.
Oh,
this is.
I got a convert.
You know, I've talked to you, and you know I've been waiting to get to this for a while, right? Like I've been. This has been something that since the very first time you mentioned it to me, it's been playing in my head, and I'm like, And I go back and I've went back and read verses in the Bible and thought, well, now let's apply this and look at it this way.
It's a journey.
Yeah, it is.
It's quite the journey, isn't it?
It makes the book a hell of a lot better. I can tell you that as a fiction piece anyway. Like, I mean, it makes the stories a lot more interesting.
Yeah. Now that I know, now I have been taught by the Bible how to manipulate people like Creflo Dollar and Joel Osteen and Kenneth Copeland and the list goes on. Jesse Duplantis and.
No, he's not.
He wants to know if you're a biblical scholar. I am not. I am self-learned. I am self-learned. I think that's called an exegete or something like that.
Exegete.
Exegete
no.
is
different.
Is slightly different.
Yeah.
Self-learned. I don't remember. It's something like an exegete or something.
Yeah. Exegetes are the scholars that assume the resurrection is true.
I can't find it.
Autodidact. That's what people are saying in the chat.
That might be it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am, because of being dyslexic, I'm not able to just sit down and take a test. Read something and take a test. I have to I have to practice it to really learn it. And so that's what I've done.
And sorry, chat, I wasn't ignoring you, but in order to put up those slides, I had to have a different panel pulled up, and because I just put them all in as overlays. That way I could just post it on screen. But whenever you first approach a presup with
erudite.
Oh yeah.
Showing great knowledge or learning. Some sort of erudite. That's what it is. But no, I could probably test out of a few courses if I went to, and in fact, I've considered doing that. There's no return on investment, of course.
Right.
Sadly, there's Elmhurst University not too far from me, and I've thought about trying to.
I've got Kentucky Christian University.
I have Ivy Tech. I went to a tech school to become a vending machine repairman, and I got into sales and marketing, and I never finished.
I went to a tech school to become an EMT, and then went to a university to become a tech.
Yeah.
But why should people?
Blessed be he asks a very important question here. Blessed be he. You should take me just as serious as your preacher at church.
Reading from the same book. And Robin's right. You don't have to. You don't have to. But all we're telling you here, Behe, is that given this situation, if we give that God is real and all those things, it just creates a bigger problem for you than the atheist perspective. It just creates an issue to where you have no way to discern one from the other. You have no way to know whether the Bible is a complete deception made to control you by the Lord of lies and deception, any more than it was the inspired word of God. You have no way to know, and that's really all we're saying here. You don't know anything. And I think it's worse than atheism actually in that situation, because we're not really asserting that anything on it. I mean, I do. I think God's bullshit, honestly. But like, I'm not going to go into an argument, and that's my feelings. That's not my position.
If blessed be he asks me to look at the trees as existence of God, I can stand next to the exact same tree that blessed be he is, and I can see the God that they see. But in the Bible, I see something that is twisted reality to make it look like the God that you worship is the one that made that tree. And the difference is I see the human that created that narrative, that created that visual, that created the simplistic yet complex scam behind everything that's written in the Bible, so that you think that tree and the God that you worship really do exist. And I just see it different. I see the humans who observed that tree and figured out how to make that connect dot close enough to our psyche to understand it and believe it, and then take advantage of us. That's what I see.
Well, I mean, we can talk about this in just the New Testament too, but the problem with that is that the New Testament refers back to the Old Testament and tells you to acknowledge it. So I mean, one of the verses I gave was that tied Satan back into all of it was that Satan was the serpent, which it doesn't tell you until Revelation. And then if Satan was the serpent and Satan is mentioned in Revelation, then we need to go back and look at what the devil is and what characteristics that devil has. And when you do that, you're left in the position of this devil that can masquerade as an angel of light, of course, would know how to deceive you by making it look like God. I mean, that why wouldn't he do it that way? If he did it any other way, it would be obvious. But if he can masquerade as an angel of light, as it says, it's not going to be obvious, and you're not going to be able to know, because even the elect can be deceived, which is a major point of it.
Let me do a screen share. I want to do some Bible.
Yeah.
I want to do some Bible in here in the New Testament, as blessed be he.
You're going to be way better at the Bible than me. That was.
I want to show you something with the first interaction at the start of.
John.
At the start of Matthew 4.
Okay.
So Jesus has just been baptized. Luke 4 and Matthew 4 are where Jesus and the devil are interacting. So I'm going to present. And it doesn't matter whether I use Luke 4 or Matthew 4. I actually prefer Luke 4. And if there was a such thing as Lucan priority, I would totally suggest that the devil wrote Luke. If the devil were real.
I got you.
Let me enlarge this a bit. There we go. So I want to show you something. Let's see. I'm not sure which. Translation. It doesn't really matter. But in the narrative, Jesus has just been baptized by John the Baptist, and he's starting his ministry, goes 40 days, 40 nights into the wilderness. And he's tempted by the devil. All right? Now, I want you to notice something. When the devil speaks, the devil speaks. When Jesus, in the red letter, what does he do? Does the devil speak? And Jesus answers with Jesus' words. Let's see what this little right here. I'm going to enlarge it just one more time. There we go. That's probably a little more visible. What's this A say? Jesus answers, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Let's see what A says. Oh, look, it's scripture. He humbled you, and you in your hunger gave a man you manna to eat, in which neither of your fathers had known. So you understand that man does not live by bread alone, but in every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. So don't tell me, blessed be he, that if I'm only focusing on the Old Testament, it doesn't apply to you. Because Jesus doesn't say what Jesus says. Jesus quotes what's already been written by a human being in Deuteronomy. Do you understand that every single time the devil asks Jesus the question, Jesus doesn't answer what Jesus says. Jesus answers with something that's already been written, that's preferred to believe is the word of God. You know what that tells me? Somebody's manufactured from existing writing a Jesus.
Yep.
It's that simple. You don't have to complicate this at all. You can tell me I can't use the Old Testament all you want. The writers of the New Testament used the Old Testament to put words into Jesus' mouth.
Over and over and
over and over and over again. And if the scam, as I suggest, is in Genesis 4 and is in Genesis 9, and that there was a precursor story that came before, just like Star Wars episode 4, 5, and 6 existed, and then 1, 2, and 3 became a thing, and then Rogue One, which tied in perfectly to episode 4, to me, Genesis 4 is the exact same way.
Yeah.
Genesis 1 through 3 is the Rogue One of Genesis 4. It ties in perfectly. They just butt up right against each other. And actually, I believe Genesis 4 came before Genesis 1 through 3 in literary function. So I hope that helps you. You cannot tell me that I'm only using the Old Testament XYZ. The Bible is using the Old Testament as Jesus' words for the fill in that gap, because they don't have what Jesus said. If Jesus really a preacher, they don't really have what he said. They just have a bunch of people who sounded a lot alike in the apocalyptic trope.
Yeah.
To me, when you read the Epistle of James, that is what an apocalyptic preacher sounded like somewhere around 50 AD. It's that simple. That's what all the preachers sounded like. Jesus, John the Baptist, and whoever was... John the Baptist was the heir apparent too, that we don't know. And it just goes back. A next generation takes over. Maybe puts a little pizzazz, puts a little panache, puts a little je ne sais quoi. They used the Old Testament to do it. They read through, they memorized, they did the same thing that I've done with the Old Testament in the areas that I've chosen to do it. And voila, that's what you have is Jesus' words.
Shelley, I like what you're talking about here, the logos from the ancient Greek writings and stuff. This is a whole nother contention, but this is something I'm actually looking into now and reading about after watching some Myth Vision stuff. So I'll have this conversation another day, but good point. But yeah, no, and that's the thing. The New Testament refers back to the Old Testament over and over and over. Every time Jesus talks in the New Testament, it's look at this thing from the Old Testament that we know was written by man.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah. And here's the thing. I don't know what your perception of what happened if Jesus was a God and he really did die and he really did rise again. He died on a Friday night and he was up by Sunday morning. Okay. So whatever transpired at that time, an amazing God would not only have finished his articles, he would have been able to pass them around for the next 40 days and ascended. We could still have copies protected by miracle today if there was really something that a Jesus who was a God had a plan, but no. They have the most trustworthy person of all time to be, quote unquote, the foundation of Christianity in Peter, who, by the way, Jesus refers to as Satan, his Satan. Not because he's a bad, deceiving guy. It's because he's his adversary at the moment, in the context. And he lies.
But that's not.
He's the most celebrated liar of all time. And you have Jesus coming in a vision to Paul, who turns out to be, admittedly, when pinned, the most celebrated deceiver, and he loves you for it because he caught you with guile and he deceived you. He tells you as such. He does it with a smile. He puts his arm around your shoulder and he says, "Man, I love you. I caught you with guile." I can't believe I got away with this for this long. I'm going to dice you. By the way, I still think that Jesus is coming back any minute now. Gotcha. Suckers!
It's the point of it is, though, it's not what those verses mean. We understand what they're supposed to mean. That's not what we're saying here. What we're trying to tell you is that
Yes.
Jesus, when asked questions and things, never uses his own words. Instead, he refers back to things written by man, almost like they're trying to fulfill some kind of prophecy. Like,
I'm my own worst enemy. It's true. I have followed the secret teachings of Jesus. I believe I have uncovered the secret teachings of Jesus by reading the Bible. It's that simple, folks. I understand how the deception works. Jesus is just a deceiver, no different than the Genesis 3, more crafty than all the rest. Jesus is a crafty serpent in a newer time.
The most.
And all he did was use existing things that were working, and he created his own. Or somebody used his likeness to create one for them, a.k.a. Paul, a.k.a. Peter, or a combination of both. Or somebody just put the frame over Peter as his narrative because they have his story about resurrected Jesus, and they've got Paul and his story of resurrected Jesus, and they married the two, and you just can't really tell which one's a vision and which one really physically happened because we don't have any eyewitnesses of either account. None. Zero. We just have hearsay accounts. So,
and it admits that it's not. This isn't. That's the thing that I think Behe isn't understanding. This is the Bible itself says these things. It's not. This isn't our somehow twice removed interpretation of things because we don't believe. The Bible says it. It's right there. It admits all these things.
To answer Robin's question, are you a Gnostic? I read the Gnostics. Bart Ehrman came out with a book with the Lost Christianities, I believe, in the late 2002, and I bought it in 2003, and Lost Scriptures in 2004, and I bought that in 2004, or I have that backwards, one of the two. I bought one when it came out, and I got the other one to follow it up the next year. So I got to read the Gnostics. I'm aware of the Gnostics. As far as I could tell, I've read all of them that are available. And once you see the world through a Gnostic light, you do get some revealing, but you still think that there's a God. You don't come off with this is the secret teachings of a Jesus. Jesus is just a human, and he rebranded what was already there that another human figured out how to manipulate other human beings in the way that is being done here. That I did since I became an atheist. In fact, I've really only done that in the last 3-ish years. Maybe 4.
So, blessed be he. That's a horrible thing to say, Jimmy. He is the light in this dark world. He that you're talking about could also be the deceiver, and this verse supports that. So, and
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. It's not that the Bible doesn't say those things. It's that deception is woven throughout it.
Yeah. So one of the things that is prominent is Matthew 7. The first warning in this title, the tree and its fruit, you will know them by their fruits. Beware of false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, inwardly are ravenous wolves. Now, when you read this narrative, this narrative is expressing, this is a sermon probably practiced by not just Jesus, but probably multiple apocalyptic preachers. That is my belief, that dozens of people were saying some variation of this, dozens at a time, because they were in and out, but starting somewhere around 75 BC to 75 AD, when the wars and rebellions were going on with the Romans, you had some narrative of this company is in our blessed land, and we need to find a way to make peace with it. And I believe these were the sermons to appease the people that were under the influence or under the thumb of an oppressive military might. So when it says here in Matthew 7, you will know them by their fruit and you recognize them. Not everyone says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Guess what? That's not the atheist. This is referring to the people who have been duped, in my opinion. This is the people who have been duped, in my opinion, by those false teachers. There's ravenous wolves in sheep's clothing. There is a secret line in there that is passing it back to it. This is not the person who is being told, tell them I plainly never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Nothing in here is something that an atheist is going to say to a God. It's the things that a Christian is going to say to a God, and you will know them by their fruits. I know this is confusing to the believer.
Yeah.
This is a different language. It's like speaking Greek, basically. Ironically. I am speaking a completely different language from what I see in these verses, from what you see in these verses. And I see that difference not because I've hardened my heart, I got scales over them, or I'm my worst enemy, as to quote you. I see them because I see the secret teachings of Jesus. The secret teachings of Jesus is he's just a human and he figured out what this deception is all about. Once you figure out what all this deception is all about, you see it everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. It is unavoidable. No, scholars are not. My work is not scholarly.
They wouldn't be a scholar anymore if they agreed with this.
They are not. This is not designed to be scholarly. This is designed to be eye-opening. It's looking through a prism and seeing the various colors through a little finer light before it spreads out on the wall. That's all I did. I see the different colors for each paraphrase, each scripture. There is a lesson to be learned from the person who is the Kenneth Copeland like, the Joel Osteen like, the Creflo Dollar like, the Jesse Duplantis like. And I see it. I see the same manual to manipulate Christians as Christians see as revered, as they're beloved, what they are in love with. I see how that can be used.
No, what we're saying is
it my opinion? It's there is no answer. There is no answer to that, because one of the things that Joe had put up here was one of the interpretations. I can't remember which one was that. Was that the 1 John? The 1 John 4:1 verse?
Yeah.
I can't remember. One of the ones that you had up there.
Here it is. No,
yeah,
that's the one.
That one will do. Dear friends, do not believe every spirit. Test the spirits you see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. There is a lot of people who can see what I see. And anybody who does see what I can see from the words that are in this book, they can either reveal it as information, and you can take it for what you will. I have a scenario, I have a video that I worked on and that I need to get back to, but I had some technical difficulties, so I moved on and started working on other things that wasn't frustrating. And I basically have a scenario in which there is an optical illusion. And for some reason, I was affected once upon a time by that optical illusion, and then I understood it was an optical illusion. And then once I learned how to see it the way it really is, I could no longer go back to seeing the illusion part of it. I could only see it the way it is. When you read the Bible the same way I do, I once believed that this was real. I once believed, just like you do, that there was a God, and this God did all these things. This God is working in my life, and I am healed by this God. I am sometimes punished by this God, etc., etc., etc. No, blessed be He. I am not building my house on the sand. I believe you have already built your house on the sand. The whole Bible is built on the sand.
Yeah.
And mighty will its fall be. Because guess what? Guess where that is? I only have to go 2 more verses from what. And what does it say? What does it say? Right there. I don't even have to change screens. If you can show me the foundation for a God, you can show me a foundation in which you have an alibi that the devil didn't do it, as Joe and I have pretty much discussed for the last hour and 20 minutes. If you can show me the foundation, then I'll know where the foundation is. You can demonstrate it to me. Prove that the devil didn't do it. And then you will have that strong foundation. Otherwise, mighty will its fall be. This is built on deception. It starts in Genesis 3.
Yeah.
And it ends. And here's the thing. Show me where faith is used either prior to Genesis 3 or after Genesis 20:10. Show me where faith is used in that time, because faith is consolidated in between those 2 points in the Bible. Deception is at the beginning of it. Deception is at the end. You end with a wedding. Congratulations.
Yeah.
We'll celebrate someday when we no longer are under the confines of a scam in which we've all been deceived by an invisible idol and a son that supposedly is a part of, just as much a part of that invisible idol as the invisible idol, and has a third branch that's just as invisible.
My question.
Yes, blessed be He.
My question to you, blessed be He, because this is actually the conclusion I wanted you to come to, is that it's a gross misinterpretation. How do you decide that your interpretation is better? By what method do you get there? Because we're looking at the same book and using the same verses that you come to a different interpretation of. So how do you get anything different, especially when you apply all of these things to do with the deception? Oh, I'm trying to catch it. The bow tie, bless you all. Ember's been a member for 5 months. Robin posted a 10-month member thing up there that every Messiah of the right is a deceiver. Of course you went there with it. But I think that that's the thing that I really want the person who sees this to think, the believer that sees this to think about, is this is a bad interpretation. Because then my question is, but by what mechanism do you decide that yours is better, and why? Because this is what the words actually say. I showed you the Bible verses that say this. It's not like I made it's not an interpretation. It says it.
Yeah. Just keep in mind, from my perspective, the people who wrote this genuinely believed the things that they wrote, except for maybe Paul. I somewhat suspect Paul knew what he was doing. At least the Paul that thought that Jesus was coming any minute, he believed in something related to something genuinely Jesus was coming. And he might not have been all the savior all the time. But whenever you point the camera at, so for instance, Joe's background, there is somebody who took that photo of those men around that building. Somebody took that photo. Who? Who took that photo? Because I'm sure there's a way for us to find out who took that photo. And that photo convinces us that there's either a wedding or a celebration, or church has just gotten out at some Ashland, Kentucky landmark. I can only assume it's a landmark. Right?
Yeah.
But somebody is behind that photo we cannot see, using equipment that we can't see the equipment. And anything that camera was pointing to and that person was using can even twist reality using what they've done. And the narrative that is placed in the New Testament, in my opinion, Paul is the person that we see in the picture. He's somewhat of the camera, but we don't see what got him convinced from behind that camera. We only see the portion and the view that we're supposed to see. And that is the perspective I ask you to look at the Bible. If you think that there is deception, if there is something in your cognitive dissonance that is just like getting in there like a screwdriver, and it's the screw's just a little too tight and you need a little bigger screwdriver. Anything that's bothering you like that, try to find how the photographer took that photo and what they were really intending you to see. What twist of reality might be just out of camera? What was cropped out? Find out those things, and you can find them out. Gnosticism does sometimes explain some of that. But sometimes also reading it in a way in which you're looking for, just like I said with Genesis 4, God doesn't need this, but a human being probably does. And we know that human beings manipulate other human beings. And voila, that's your answer. It far more explains. And blessed be he doesn't need to provide evidence that the devil exists.
Yeah.
Because the devil probably doesn't exist. At least I haven't seen no such thing. But I have seen human beings deceive other humans using writing. So that's my default position. And frankly, the foundation to make that claim is far greater than, oh no, there's Jesus. Jesus did it. Jesus orchestrated this with the Holy Spirit. Voila. It was magic.
Yeah. Magic.
God's magic.
Yeah.
That is a I would just like to give a shout out if 43 Alley is that is a quote from one of his videos in which he asks his dad. They've been going around handing out baseball equipment to all his baseball team members. He's like, it took us all day. Imagine Santa Claus hitting all these. He's like starting to think about it, and he's like, "Hey, he asks his dad. He's like, "Hey, how does Santa Claus do this?" His dad says, "It was God's magic." Or no, he says it was magic, and then he later asks his grandmother if on the ark they had just two bears, or if they had black bears, brown bears, Kodiak bears, polar bears, and he keeps listing all these bears, and his grandma kind of pauses and says, "It was God's magic."
Yeah, I think it's funny that you think this is the crazy position because we've laid out all the evidence, and whenever you have this, all points to what we're saying here, and then so then let's apply Occam's razor to it, right? This is a possible outcome. We know that man is deceptive and does it to other men for reasons of greed and power and other things, but we know that man does that. So is it crazier to think that man did that once again to a primitive group of people to have power over them? Or that all this supernatural horse shit is the case, and that everything's hunky-dory in the Bible? Like, but even then, you're still left with the problem of, if the Bible's true, then you have to account for the evil things that God does, and this tells you why. So it works both ways. This is good for whether you're the atheist or the believer. I mean, it works both ways.
Yeah.
You have to account for these things. If you can't account for these things, it's not us that have the crazy position. It's you. Well, not you specifically, Behe. That's not what I'm saying.
The Christian.
New covenant. Now you're just throwing gibberish out there. Now you're just flailing. Stop it. Stop it. But I think that like this it's not that I think that you're confusing something here. I think a couple people in the chat are confusing something here. At least for on my part, I will explain it. I don't believe that any of this is true. I don't believe that there's any reason to think any of it's true. But I have to talk to so many people who want to have a conversation, and the starting point in that conversation is, this is true. This book is true, because this book is the only source for the things that they're claiming. So we take the things in their book and we look at it, and this is what the book says. And the things that the book says aren't helpful either. I don't actually believe any of this. I think it's the more likely one, that man is just a deceptive asshole and use this to take control of everybody else. Like, I don't. It's not that we think that God's the devil. We don't think that God exists, or I don't. I won't.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. I agree. Yeah. The reason it looks like the God is the deceiver is because somebody is playing God in the book, and that person is deceiving.
Yeah. If you're going to push me to take on that belief, though, in order to have a conversation with you, this is going to be my next question. How do you reconcile the problems within the only source for that belief? Because if I accept that, then we've got a bigger problem. It's much, much worse if I accept it than if I don't. If for the atheist, it's stable and it makes sense and it fits within the world we live in, and it comports with reality. For the believer, it's a whole different set of supernatural magical problems and that they can't account for.
Yeah. Hey, blessed be he. I could probably come up with around 20-ish verses in which you are warned in some variation of wording, don't be deceived, my brethren.
Please don't go out and teach people this garbage. Jimmy, she makes sure to put Jimmy because she doesn't want me to answer.
Yeah.
She doesn't like me.
Blessed be he. Your holy book tells you don't be deceived. And it also tells you that the entire world would be deceived. So it's your responsibility to go out and make sure that you haven't gotten deceived by the devil, as Revelations 12:9 suggests. It is your responsibility. It says it in 1 Corinthians 15:33. It says it in James 2:23, if I remember correctly. I might have the verse wrong there.
Yeah.
In the book of Jude, it not only states, hey, don't be deceived, it also suggests we've been infiltrated by deceivers.
Yeah.
And then Revelation starts. So my promise to you, blessed be he, is that this is in your book. And if you want to turn a blind eye, you want to plug your ears, and you want to la 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 all the way to the promised land, be my guest. I'm not telling you wrong, but I've done what the Bible's instructed me to do, apparently. And when it came down to it, I kind of figured out that there's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as Jesus as a God. There's no such thing as a Holy Spirit. There's no such thing as the devil or Satan, demons, bad angels, good angels, heaven or hell. There's just a human who used these storytelling utensils as humans use tools to accomplish their goals. That's it. That's it.
The atheist agenda.
I'll accept that. This is my agenda. Yes. I'll tell you what. If I were a smart man, I would just shut up, go become a parishioner.
Yeah.
Get a nice living quarters. I can almost promise you that there's a nice living quarters off of that church once upon a time. Would have been one of the nicest places in Ashland in 1840 or whenever that church was built. It would have been one of the nicest places in town to live.
Yeah, this was right downtown. This was
it doesn't get any better than that.
You can tell by all the other stuff around it.
Like, my guess is I can still get that and more if I just shut up, get baptized, convert to Christ, tell my stories, and I know how the sausage is made, folks.
Yeah.
It's not pretty.
It would be so much easier for all of us just to pretend that we know things we don't know, wouldn't it? That's what you're saying, right? It would be so much easier just to fake it till you make it because you pretend that something's true in a book that was written by primitives. Like but again, this argument plays both sides of that. It allows you to either take it from that point of view or to then engage with it and say, okay, your God's real and all that. Now explain why your interpretation is different than mine. And you have no method of doing that. Yes, squanderers and mockers. Yeah, you can say that all you want, but so far you've done nothing to provide any reason. All you've done is attack people that are telling you what your book says, which is what your pastor does. So go call him a squanderer and a mocker because he's doing the same thing.
No. I believe what I believe.
Yeah,
I am sincere and genuine, and either I have sought knowledge and I found it, or I'm deceived, just like every other atheist. A Christian believes an atheist is under the influence of the scales over our eyes, or their hardened heart, or we just want to sin.
That gets into a whole nother thing. But
yeah. Preach, Joe. Preach.
That gets into a whole nother atheist conversation of why I've chosen to reject the extreme positions of religion. But I think that and let me also point out something. What I gave here today as Bible verses was about half of them that support this. There's a whole bunch more. There's a lot more. These were just what I consider to be the most important ones. There's a lot more.
There's a bot that just came in on Twitch, I think. You can see.
Oh yeah. I get when I do get anything from Twitch on here, it's always a bot. I have no moderators over on Twitch. No one watches from there, so I get like 1 or 2 viewers every show.
I have a Twitch, but
I'm gonna close mine. I think there's no point in continuing it really. Not right now, anyway. Maybe maybe if I grow a bit more or something, it may be more useful to me in the future. But right now, it's not doing anything. I would be better off to stream this to Facebook than Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
Which I did just get an offer from Facebook to. I forget what they call their program that allows you to it's the equivalent of a YouTube partner on Facebook, but whatever. I don't know. I haven't even looked into that. I'm having too much fun here.
And this is fun.
Yeah, oh yeah, no. I think this is one of the more fun aspects of it because it allows you to put yourself in the shoes of a believer for a moment, or not. You don't have to. I mean, and it's just such a versatile thing, and it plays into all, like, the problem of evil isn't really that great on its own. Like, it's not a good argument, but whenever you go back and look at it from this point of view of why the problem of evil is there, this explains it because of the deception of why suffering is there because of the deception. All of those things play into it. All the awful things that God of the Old Testament does is all makes sense in this light because God's actually the deceiver. But that is just my opinion on it. Like I said, I don't believe any of it's true, but it makes the book a hell of a lot better read.
Yeah. I completely agree. I read a completely different book than everybody else does.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll come across somebody that sees it in a different light. But for the most part, I'm reading a different book than everybody else is.
This is what This is what happens, Behe, when you give an atheist a Bible.
Mhm. Well, I should be a Christian. If the
Yeah.
Bible didn't say what it says, the way it says it, I would probably be a Christian.
Yeah, I've dealt with Jim Bob Shelley. I've been over on his channel. I'll never go back. It's the most toxic thing I've ever seen in my life.
I've watched like one or two videos. I think he went on like about 2 years ago on one of his animated characters on Pine Creek,
Yeah.
and I interacted there then. And anytime somebody, instead of addressing what I says, just says I listed a fallacy or something, they have no interest in a conversation. So
No,
I
no.
dismissed him immediately then.
Yeah.
Even
It's-
if what I said was a fallacy, like there was some merit to what I said. But the thing is, since I read the Bible differently, and what I write down as a option of, reading it, interpreting it differently, I speak a different language that some people just don't understand. Yeah.
Cool Cat asked, what's your take on the existence or lack of free will?
Yeah, I spouted some data earlier about faith and deceiver or deception in the Bible. 0 times is free will mentions in the Bible. It's pretty simple data. It's not in there.
Yeah.
Free will
I
is
think,
an apologist's trick to make you believe that they don't need to provide evidence.
right. I think that the verses, even if we don't talk about deception, I think that the verses that point to God gave this magical creature, Satan, the ability to deceive you, takes away free will immediately. I think that alone says that you have no free will, that you're just a plaything of these supernatural beings that made you out of dirt. Free will was never part of it. In the garden, Eve had no free will. She was deceived. It's
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think I saw somebody clip a Matt Dillahunty quote of, there would be no contest. If you're in a perfect paradise, let's something that I use on Blessed Be He type of believers to help them understand this point, especially when we were talking about Matthew 7 earlier. You will know them by their fruits.
Yeah.
If you live in God's controlled perfect paradise, and somebody comes along and tells you something that exposes the God being for not having told the truth, then the perfect paradise is no longer perfect.
right. Never was.
Never
Just because
was.
If they have the ability to even do that, it was never perfect.
It's never perfect.
And that's what I mean by
It's an impossibility to know them by that fruit.
when God made his creation with the ability to be deceived, the possibility of the garden being perfect is contradictory, because it can't be both ways.
Does Blessed
Now,
Be has Blessed Be He ever jumped on
No.
anywhere?
No, blessed be he's never even really engaged in a meaningful way.
I know she's got some several kids, and she's fosters or something like that, if I remember correctly from other interactions. But
Yeah, she's claimed that.
my fruits are very simple. Okay, let's do this thought experiment. Blessed be He. Let's do this thought experiment. In John 14, there the first, I believe, 1 through 4, verses 1 through 4. There is a reference that Jesus is going to go make a place for you. And he is going to have plenty of rooms in his Father's house for all of his followers. Okay? Now, I want you to imagine this perfect paradise in which he's going to build just for you. And it's dinner time. He's been working all the livelong day, and he's been putting up the best, finest materials to make for his faithful. They're mansions. They're perfect. And the orchards of the finest fruit in heaven Now, scenario 2 is that Jesus is building these houses and he's making them with okay materials. They're not really mansions, but they kind of look like mansions, and they're just okay. In fact, they're knowledge of good and evil mansions. And it's dinner time, and in scenario 2, he's handed a plate from the orchards and gardens of heaven that have sprinkled in there is some fruit that looks pretty good, some fruit that's not that good, and some sin, and some deception. Now, in heaven, which scenario would play out according to you? The simple fact is that if you can imagine a heaven that doesn't have anything wrong with the fruit and anything wrong with the materials of building the house, and there's no fake foundations in the houses, that would be scenario 1, then you have to ask, if it's on earth as it is in heaven, why we have it here. The mansion can be here just the same as it's there. And it can be the best fruit here, which we have. Our Neolithic learnings have done us well. I don't think you need a supernatural being to bless any tree. We have proper science that has investigated it and figured out how to grow things the best way possible. Feed the world the best way possible. To control diseases the best way possible. I don't believe a supernatural being has done any of that. And in effect, our orchards are better here than they will be in heaven. Our hospitals are better here than they will be in heaven. Scenario 2 doesn't exist. We are better than scenario 1. If we just let ourselves be that way.
Excellent. Love it. PC posted my GoFundMe for her 7-month member post. Thanks, PC.
PC's wonderful. Thank you, PC.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. All through this, she's posted all the links to the videos we talked about. She posted mind shifts. She's posted your stuff several times. She's awesome at keeping up with all that. Just on top of it, I take for granted the fact that I don't have to do all this stuff in chat, because I would never accomplish it. Either I would sit here and put things in chat and not talk, or I'll talk and not put things in chat. But I've burned up too many brain cells to do both.
Blessed be he has made a claim that there's no hospitals in heaven.
Uh-oh.
On earth as it is in heaven. If there's no hospitals in heaven, then there's no need for hospitals here.
Right. That's rough. I don't know, but when I get sick, I'd rather go to the hospital than
Go to church, get prayed over?
go to church.
Unsize the demons.
Hey, that healing stuff is big stuff around here, right?
Oh, I bet.
Hands on people and stuff.
I think I'm gonna
pastime.
convert tomorrow and become an exorcist and
Oh, sure.
make all kinds of bank.
Yeah. I haven't personally been to any churches where they claim to exorcise any demons, but I've seen a lot of the here, let me touch you, and you pretend that it did something. But I don't know. But now there's another part to this, and I said I wanted to make a few videos about how to deal with this presup thing, and that's why Behe got so tore up in the chat about this, because that's what this is for. The next thing that I want to talk about whenever I bring this subject up again, though, is then I want to talk about divine hiddenness, because I think that, again, in conjunction with this or on its own, is another one of those important topics that needs to be dealt with, without getting too much into the guessing the mind of God and stuff. We'll stop short of that. But the divine hiddenness, that's where I'm going to go next, just so everybody knows. I have haven't scheduled any actual guests in the future, so I just quit doing that. Well, actually, that's not true. I do have some guests scheduled for the future, but well, in store for the future, not scheduled necessarily. But so the next place I'm going to take this is I want to talk about divine hiddenness, because I think that again, for the person who's making a presupposition, is something that they have to deal with. They have to agree that God could have done it any way that He chose to do it, and chose to do it this way, and chooses to be the God of the Bible. All right. So we're coming up on 2 hours. Let's get this done.
That was fun.
First of all, I'll let Jimmy say a little bit about what he's working on. But before he does, because I know part of what he's going to say, there is a link to Jimmy's channel, both in the chat, or both in the title. Oh, well, it's in the chat also, but in the title, the chat, and the description, Jimmy's linked. Jimmy, what are you working on?
I'm working on we touched on it a little bit on the Genesis 4 and the Genesis 3 narrative. Alex O'Connor was on a podcast viewed quite substantially, stating that Jesus and the serpent are the same. And I'm working on that video right now. It's going to be recorded and edited. I think I'm done doing live now that StreamYard doesn't do the tab shares in Chrome anymore, audio complications and stuff. So it's now affecting Restream as well. And I broke my Chrome or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no workaround except for closing it and reopening it on the thing, and it goes out. Luckily, the last time I did a stream on with me, so I basically have to have somebody on who can't hear it, because I still hear it just the same. And it'll go out.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So if I'm using StreamYard to record and everything, which is what I used to do, I used to line up my tabs and go one by one, and document what the timestamps are, and go one by one, and I can't do it that way. I have to relearn a different way. So now I've gotten into editing. My last video was edited and manufactured from beginning to end, and I think I'm going to start doing it that way some more. I also think I'm going to, since I'm doing it this way, and it's so much more time consuming, and it's purchasing things that I didn't plan on purchasing, and I've decided to start doing Patreon and doing this for hopefully some reward.
Yeah. Whenever we wrap up here, I'll tell you how I handle that situation, because I have to deal with that some too. That might, I don't know, it may help you, it may not. But all right, so I told you the things I got coming up, and I guess the other thing is, thanks for everybody coming to watch us today. Thanks for everybody that interacted with us, asked questions and stuff, and the members chats and all that. Thank you for the members and my Patreon supporters out there, which Dave from over at Captive Desk just joined my Patreon. Thanks a lot, Dave. I appreciate it. I do want to give a big shout out too, also for Mark Reed. Mark Reed went to my GoFundMe last night, or I don't know, in the last day and a half or so. I don't know, because he's in a different time area, but and donated $100 to my GoFundMe thing that Jess had made, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Robin.
Thanks, Mark. But yeah, no, thanks, Robin. And I appreciate everybody coming and talking to us, though. It's been awesome. If you're new here and you're not familiar, please just like and subscribe, and head over to Jimmy's channel and subscribe over there. Jimmy talks a lot more about this topic, and as you can see, is a little more well versed in the Bible than I am. I couldn't tell. There's about 3 verses in the Bible that I know off the top of my head.
And here's the thing: I just know where to find. I don't know the Bible that well anymore. I've forgotten it in terms of having memorized it once upon a time, or I just know the gist of where it is and stuff. And every once in a while, a Jeremiah verse will come in that I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a couple more of those too where they do that. I'll have to. I didn't write them down. I only
Yeah.
went the ones I wrote down. Am I late? DS says when we're wrapping up. No, you're
Yeah.
right on time, DS. But
every once in a while, I could get cat ears.
yeah, I had to look at that a minute ago too. I was like, "What is that?"
And Alpha, if you know who Alpha is, he was reviewing a video of mine, and he referred to him as my horns.
Yeah,
but yeah, they're bow ties. There's no. I don't believe that there's a devil to exist to have devil horns. Just so you know.
And yeah, but I appreciate everybody who supports the channel in any way that you do it, even if it's just showing up and watching the video. But definitely like and subscribe at the very least. All right, well, I'll see everybody. I don't know. Wednesday, Robin and I will be doing our political show. Believe me, we've got plenty to talk about this week on that show. The political news of the week is quite the spectacle. So we're gonna have some fun with that this week, I imagine. Trump's went out there and said all kinds of crazy shit. So we'll be talking about that this week. Thanks everybody. Have a great one. Catch us next time. And thank you, Jimmy, for coming and talking to me. You made this show a million times better by adding your part into it. I truly appreciate it.
My pleasure being on. Thanks for throwing me an invite. That was quite a surprise. Thank you. And Bowtie bless you all.
I've got a button. Later, guys.